everyone, I'm attorney Aiden Durham with 180 Law Co. in Denver, Colorado, and welcome back to All Up in Your Business. In this episode of All Up in Your Business, I'm going to answer the age-old question, do I need an attorney to get a trademark? But before we get into it, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share, and check the description for some links to additional information and resources on how to get a trademark. So the big question, do I need an attorney to get a trademark? The simple answer is no. No, you don't, unless you do. So for most people, for most applicants, you're not required to have an attorney represent you or help you with the trademark application process. There's no law or requirement forcing you to do that. You can do it pro se, which means on your own without a lawyer. But there are a few situations where you do actually need one. This primarily applies to applicants who are not domiciled in the U.S. So the USPTO, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, they recently, within the last year, made some changes to the requirements for applications and started requiring that any foreign applicants have legal representation and have an attorney represent them. The reason for this, there are a lot of reasons, but the biggest one was to prevent abuse of the trademark registration process. Because in the US, there's really not a ton of oversight with regard to trademark applications and whether people are making fraudulent statements in the application or otherwise giving some kind of false information. And when the person doesn't live in the US, isn't located in the US, and the USPTO, if the government finds out someone did something wrong or unlawful, it's really hard for them to do anything about it if this person isn't even in the US. So this partly was began in order to try to curb that misuse and fraud of the trademark system. And so, unfortunately, for any non-US applicants, you do actually need a lawyer to get a trademark. So what does it mean, domiciled versus non-domiciled? Basically, the USPTO says if you consider the United States to be your permanent legal residence, then that means you're domiciled in the US. Or in the case of a business like an LLC or a corporation, if the principal office address, if the primary business location is in the US, then that counts as a US domiciled applicant. And so if you're unsure of whether you are US domiciled or not, really just kind of think of where do you consider yourself to live. Even if you travel around a lot, maybe you don't have an actual permanent spot that you live, do you consider the US to be your home, or do you consider another country to be your home? If you have an address that you consider to be your home address in the US, then that's enough really for that domicile requirement, as long as you consider it to be your permanent legal residence here. But if none of that exists, if you're just a foreign applicant, you're going to do business in the US, but you have no actual presence or residence or physical presence here, then you will need an attorney to help you with the trademark process. If you happen to file an application, if you're non-US domiciled and you file the application on your own, or if you filed it prior to, I believe, August 3rd. So if you had filed an application prior to August 3rd or after that rather, and you weren't represented by an attorney, then the examining attorney who's assigned to your application will issue an office action explaining that due to the fact that you're not domiciled in the US, you will need an attorney of record to represent you through the process. So it's not like you're completely out of luck if you've already filed your own application without knowing about these requirements. You will get an opportunity to rectify that and correct it and find an attorney to help you with the remaining process. Regardless of all of that, even if you are domiciled in the US and you don't need a lawyer to help you with the trademark application, it is still a really, really good idea to have an attorney help you anyway. Even if it's not needed, it's still a really good idea. Why? I'll tell you why. There are a lot of reasons. The first is a lawyer is going to be able to tell you if you should even register your trademark in the first place. Not every trademark is worthy of registration or eligible for registration. Sometimes you have to put more into it. Sometimes you have to use a trademark to make it be a trademark. Well, that's not true. You always have to use a trademark before it becomes a trademark. But sometimes you have to put it into use and build some notoriety and distinctiveness around it before you can actually get the trademark registered. So that's something a lawyer is going to be able to tell you is don't waste your money on registering this trademark because it's not going to do you any good. Or the opposite. Please spend your money on this because it's going to be really important and really valuable for your business. So you're going to get that advice one way or the other. And then even before you start the application, a good trademark attorney is going to do a full search for you to make sure, again, it's worth it to file the application. A trademark attorney is going to search for existing trademark registrations or existing applications that might be confusingly similar to yours. They'll also typically search state level registrations and common law uses and business listings and domain name uses too. It varies depending on the attorney. We all do different types of searches and different things, but a lawyer is going to help you do that. And then even more importantly, will help you analyze that search because you might be able to do the search yourself. There are trademark search companies that will perform the search for you and give you a huge report, and you don't have to be a lawyer to get those. But you'll now have this huge report of search results and findings, and you may not know what to do with that. Whereas a trademark lawyer will know how to analyze those results and determine what the odds are or the likelihood of successfully registering your trademark. And then along those same lines, with that search, often us lawyers, we start strategizing in our head depending on the search results. If we see a trademark out there that's kind of similar to our client's trademark, we can think strategically of ways to file the application to avoid what little chance there might be, or to help even minimize even more that risk that there might be a likelihood of confusion or that the trademark might otherwise be rejected. And really this typically comes down to figuring out the proper descriptions of goods and services in the application, because sometimes we'll want to be very careful and strategic with those descriptions in order to avoid potential conflict with another one. Whereas applicants who are not represented by lawyers, they're not doing this with any help, they're doing it on their own, they typically won't know to think that far ahead. They're gonna look for the proper goods and services that apply to their business, but they're not going to look at it in the context of these existing trademarks and their goods and services descriptions. So those are a few reasons why it really is important to have a lawyer help you with the trademark application process, even if it isn't required. Really, we are going to make sure that you're not just completely wasting your money and wasting your efforts on this trademark application. And we're going to do everything that we can and that we know to help increase the chances of your trademark successfully being registered. And finally, the last reason, it's a really good idea for an attorney to help you with the trademark application process is because of the dreaded office actions. A large majority of trademark applications will receive one sort of office action or another in its application process. Often, these are going to be big deal office actions that are based around a likelihood of confusion and essentially rejecting registration because of a likelihood of confusion of this other trademark. It is very, very unrecommended that you try to respond to one of those office actions on your own. Often it's necessary to do a lot of legal research, and you need to include citations to case history and the precedent that you're citing in your response. And so there really is an aspect of it that requires some level of legal training or legal writing and research know-how. So especially when it comes to those office actions, if getting your trademark registered is your goal, then you should definitely have a lawyer help you with responding to any office actions, if nothing else. So to cap it all off, to summarize all of the fun, do I need a lawyer to get a trademark? No, you don't, unless you're not domiciled in the US. But it's still a really good idea either way. Like I said, check the description below for some additional resources. If you are interested in getting a trademark and you're still on the fence about working with a lawyer, despite my protests to the opposite, I've got an option for you. You can check out Brandish DIY Your Trademark Application, which is my on-demand webinar that teaches you step by step how to complete the trademark application and how to prepare for it. So I walk you through my whole process of doing a clearance search, for searching for other trademarks and determining the right goods and services to use on the application, how to prepare the proper specimen, really goes into a lot of detail for each step of the way up to filing the application and hitting that submit button. So check the description for a link to that. Or if you are sufficiently scared by this, which I hope you are, I would really prefer all of you to not file your own trademark applications. Even if you don't work with me, work with some other lawyer. But if you did want to work with me, that would be great. And you can check out Brand Bombshell, which is my all-inclusive trademark registration package where I handle every step of the process, so you don't have to think about it twice. Finally, you can check the description to download my free guide, 3 tips for trademarking your brand. So if you're still not quite ready to get that trademark, download this guide so you're at least getting the wheels rolling for when you are ready. Drop a comment below, let me know what you think. Oh, and by the way, just disclaimer, no, I didn't go to Harvard. This is just a comfy shirt. But no, I did not go to Harvard. Not quite that smart or that rich. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Aiden Durham, and I'll see you next time.